Okay, let's in this video look at how to get Excel to look up the data that corresponds to these random numbers. I'm going to use the vlookup function to do that, and if this is new for you, this is an important function. So let's focus on just getting one bit of data for each of these cars I've selected. As an example, I'm going to try and get the manufacturer name. You can do this for any column in your data, but you'll need a new vlookup command, which I'll explain in a moment, to get a different column. Let's just focus on the manufacturer for now, and I'll explain how to generalize that. So this is going to be the manufacturer column, and I'd just like it to go and find the car that is associated with these numbers. Notice I changed something and the numbers changed, so this is where you have to paste these values if you need to keep them the same. But anyway, the manufacturer column, I wanted to find that number and look up in this data set what the manufacturer that goes with that number is and report back. And the command to do that, as I've mentioned, is called vlookup. So it's a lookup function. And the V stands for vertical, in fact. There is actually also an HLOOKUP function, which surprisingly enough stands for horizontal. But since we're looking down the column vertically for our data, we need to use the VLOOKUP function. And if you press tab to select it, it asks for a lot of things. It's looking for a lookup value, a table array, a column index number, and something in square brackets, which we'll come to. First of all, the lookup value is the value you are telling it to look up, and that is the value just to the left of it. So I'm pressing the left arrow key to highlight cell A2. I could have typed A2, but I want that to be the number it looks up. Press a comma to get to the next entry in this formula. It's now asking for the table array. So this is the table, the matrix or the rectangle of stuff that it's going to look up in. So it's got to start with the column that has those random IDs in. So that's on another sheet. So I'm going to click onto the other sheet and select the table. I'm just going to choose all of the data here. So I'm going to start here. I'm using... If you hold down Shift, you can select more data. I'm also holding down Control to jump to the end of the data. It's jumped to column V there, and if I press down, it's jumped all the way to row 4450, which I'm expecting it to. And in the formula at the top, you can see that it's got this original sheet. The exclamation mark means it's now telling a cell reference, and the cell reference is A1, the first cell. A colon means all the way horizontally and vertically to V 4450. And that is what I want. That's the table I needed to look up, but I haven't finished with this formula yet. So press comma to get to the next entry, and you can see that column index number is now highlighted. This is asking for which column in that table should it report back. And since I started by selecting the ID number, and the next column is the manufacturer name, the column I want is number 2. Number 1 was the original ID number, number 2 is the manufacturer, so I'm going to type the number 2 in here. If I wanted a different column, I just have to figure out what number column it is. So further into the list, if I typed column 10, it would report back whatever is in column 10. Almost there. Press a comma again, and it's now telling me what's this range lookup thing, and it's actually giving me a little helpful explanation here. I can either type true or false here by the look of things, and if I type true, it will report back on an approximate match. It does something quite clever. If I report false, it will only give me an exact match for the number it's looking up, and that is what I want. So play with the true version some other time, but I want a false because I want it to give me an exact match only. So I'm going to press tab to select that. Close the bracket, I've finished the function, and if I press return, it should start looking up the numbers and reporting back the manufacturer. So press return, and it's telling me that random ID 3930 is a Volkswagen. I'm going to go and check, just so you know you can trust this. So jumping to the left hand side, 3000, what was it? 3930, we should be able to find that pretty quickly. I'm going to use page up to jump a bit further. 3930 is there, a Volkswagen. So I trust it. It's looking up that number and reporting back the manufacturer. And there is one final twist though. What I want to do is just copy this formula down. Notice the random numbers have changed. That's annoying unless you paste the values on top of it. But anyway, for this purposes, it looks like it's now looking up whatever number this is and reporting back. There is a problem which you must stay aware of though. Have a look at the top formula. Those numbers are looking healthy. If you look at the next formula though, it's changed from 2 and 51, where it used to be 1 and 50 there. Because I copied the formula down, and it's also updating which one to look at, it's looking up A3, which I want it to do, Excel changes a formula as you copy it down, which is mostly what you want it to do. However, I don't want it to change where I'm looking up the data. And if I go to the end here, you can see it's starting on row 10 and going to a whole bunch of the page on the previous page where there is no data. And I've got to be really careful of that, because actually when I've copied this formula down, it's not looking up the whole list. It doesn't appear to have caused any problems, but it's a sort of bug that can go unspotted until something goes catastrophically wrong. A good way to fix this. Let's change the top formula. I'm going to select those cells, and I'm going to tell Excel to not change as it copies down. and we're going to do something called an absolute reference instead of a relative reference. This is one of the dark arts of Excel, and if you haven't seen this before, this is really important. I'm going to press the F4 button and watch what happens to the formula. Some random dollar signs have appeared in front of the letters and the numbers, and they are indicating that this is now an absolute reference, and it won't ever change those numbers or columns as you copy this formula around. If you press F4 again, it takes some of the dollar signs out. It's only got absolute references on the numbers now, and if I press F4 one more time, it changes to putting the dollar signs in front of the letters, which means it will keep the columns the same, but it might change the numbers. And pressing it one more time gets rid of them again, back to where we were. I would like to completely fix this, and if you think about those dollar signs meaning fix that reference, don't ever change it, and that is what we want, and I'm going to press return on that formula. It looks like it hasn't changed its behavior, but you can see the dollar signs there, and if I copy that down now, in the normal way, you can see that even if I click on the last formula, those numbers have not changed, even though the first number has, because I want it to look up A11, but I want to look in the same place as it does all along. And that absolute reference thing is incredibly important to remember, otherwise you'll end up looking for stuff in a bit of your data that doesn't have any data in, or something catastrophic like that. This principle, though, can be carried on to look up other stuff more than just the manufacturer, but here's a neat way of choosing some random numbers and therefore looking up the data that corresponds to those random numbers.